Can y'all believe it's been almost 2 years since the last time we spoke? Man, time really does fly. But look, as you can see, I'm back home in Chicago and it feels so good to be back. But man, we got a lot of catching up to do though. I think the last time we spoke, I had just finished my senior season at Chapel Hill and officially committed to go play football at Alabama. Well, as I'm sure you can imagine, a lot has changed since then, so let's go ahead and get into it. So we gonna flash back to my first day on campus here at Alabama University. Now, if you tuned in the last episode, you should know that I committed here after my breakout senior season at Chapel Hill. Well, one of the main selling points that helped me make my decision was the living arrangements they have for athletes. Instead of staying in a small cramped dorm room like most other universities, here at Bama they put you up in a nice house. Now, of course I don't live here alone. It's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath crib that I share with 2 other teammates. We each got our own room and bathroom with a nice sized living room and kitchen as well. But look, I'll be honest, I don't even really remember my first few days on campus. My grandpa gave me his Lexus to drive until my NIL money kicked in, so me and the guys spent every single day partying, drinking, and, well, you should know. But speaking of NIL, as soon as my first check hit, I sent my grandparents some money for bills and utilities. You know, my grandpa is a pastor, so he refused to accept it unless I told him it was for my tithes and offerings. Anyways, the next stop I made was at the dealership, and y'all should already know what I got. I wore that red key around my neck every day like it was a diamond chain, just waiting for somebody to ask about it. Well, nobody ever said anything, but I know for sure they was looking. Bruh, when I first got here, I should have been nominated for Player of the Year, and I'm not talking about on the field. If she was a 7 or above, chances are her number was in my phone. I picked up a reputation around campus as a ladies' man. It seemed like every other night it was a new baddie over at the crib. This went on all the way up until spring camp started. Bruh, I came in totally unprepared and out of shape. All that drinking and partying caught up to me quick. I think I threw up every day for like the first week. By the time the spring game got here, I had finally got my wind back, but I had just spent all the training camp getting in shape, whereas all the other running backs were already in shape and they was just sharpening their skills. Well, this caused me to slip down the depth chart, and before I knew it, I was barely getting any reps at practice. The running back coach called me into his office and we had a very tough conversation.
Well, Smith, I think you knew this conversation was coming. The coaches and I have talked, and we believe it'd be best if you considered redshirting this year. Your play as of right now is nowhere close to where we expected it to be when we brought you in, and that's okay. Sometimes the transition from high school to college can be tough. Just take a year off to learn the game and build your body up. Come back next year fresh and ready to lead this offense from the backfield.
After meeting with Coach, I'll be honest, I was completely devastated. Although I hadn't been playing sports very long, I had never been nobody's backup. So redshirting and not playing at all was crazy. I laid in bed that night with my mind set on hitting the transfer portal, but I quickly found out it was way too late into the year for all that. In my mind, I only had 2 options, either quit the team or redshirt and try again next year. Well, good thing my grandpa is a lot wiser than I am because he recommended something I never even thought of.
Well, Darius, there are several other positions on the field. Why not humble yourself and go talk with your coach? You have the natural speed and athleticism. I'm sure there's another position you can play.
After hanging up with my grandpa, I immediately went to go talk to my coach. He thought it was a bad idea and insisted that I redshirt, but I wasn't going for it. I refused to leave his office until he agreed to give me a tryout at another position. Once he finally gave in, it was time to get to work. I spent the next few weeks before the first game in the weight room and in the film room. I swear I probably did 1,000 squats just trying to maximize my explosiveness. Well, the first game came and went and I didn't see the field not once. But the second game on the road versus Texas A&M, it was my time to shine. We were down late in the third quarter and that's when coach called my number. I was the only man back to return it and bruh, I took that thing up the field for 45 yards. That one play earned my spot as the second kick returner along with my guy Kool-Aid. Every team knew how dangerous he was returning kicks, but they had no idea who I was. So for the first half of the season, all the teams kicked my way, and more times than not, I made them pay. I didn't take a single handoff my freshman year, but instead, I made a name for myself on special teams. I finished the year being awarded the Johnny the Jet Rodgers Award, and I was selected as a first-team All-American. So as you just seen, my freshman year at Bama was filled with many ups and downs, but that's honestly been a story of my life. But trust me though, things get greater later. Yeah, my sophomore year was completely mind-blowing and I promise you nobody saw it coming. But listen, I need y'all to stay tuned to the very end of this episode because I need your advice. With Coach Saban retiring, there's been a lot of changes within the program, and honestly, I think it's time for me to weigh out my options. But yeah, let's get back into it. I took a completely different approach to my sophomore year. With my guy Jace McClain leaving for the NFL, I knew the starting job would be up for grabs. I spent the entire summer in the weight room, getting my body right, and in the film room, getting my mind right. I came into training camp the 4th running back on the depth chart, but by the end of camp, I had officially secured the starting job. Kicking off my sophomore year, I finally start my campaign in the backfield for the Crimson Tide. Now, we'd be taking on Virginia Tech in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game to start the season. We came in ranked number 4 in the country, so I knew everybody had their eyes on our program as we lost several key pieces from last year's team to the NFL draft. Now, the first drive down the field was going according to plan. Well, that's until I went down with a very painful injury, which ended up being a bruised rib. I would be out that game midway through the 4th quarter, where I would come back and score my first collegiate touchdown from the running back position. This moment meant so much to me because, as you all know, I worked extremely hard to get to this point, but of course I wasn't done yet. With about 2.5 minutes left in the final quarter, I would cut back a draw play to the left-hand side of the field, completely confusing the defense and score a 67-yard touchdown, untouched by the Virginia Tech defenders. We were off to a very hot start as we picked up our very first W of the season, but our next opponent would be looking to put a stop to our victory train before it even started rolling. Our next game would be on the road versus the Texas A&M Aggies. We had a huge target on our back as we had moved into the number 1 spot in all of college football. Well, this game is where I would make a name for myself and send a message to all the opposing teams that I'm the real deal. Just like in the game versus Virginia Tech, I would score a huge touchdown after cutting back a draw play to the left-hand side of the field, striking first and giving us the 7-0 lead. Now, the Aggies were able to go down and score a field goal, bringing them to within 4, but that wouldn't last very long. Hey man, credit to our O-line and our receivers blocking on that outside. I was able to find a hole in the defense and cut the ball upfield for yet another huge touchdown, increasing our lead yet again. My speed and vision, matched with the O-line's ability to create holes, proved to be a match made in heaven. I swear, on most plays, I wouldn't even get touched until I was already 10 to 15 yards up the field. It wasn't just me either. I mean, my quarterback Jalen Monroe proved to have elite speed and agility as he was able to carve up the Aggie defense just as well. We went on to cruise to our first victory on the road, and I had a crazy day on the ground. I went for over 250 yards for 2 touchdowns on only 18 attempts. But look, man, my performance in those first 2 games of the season thrust me into the Heisman watch, but I knew it was still early on and we had a lot of games left to play in the season, so I didn't pay it any mind. Taking on Colorado State, we had to make sure that we were 100% locked in and focused on the task at hand. Yeah, this is one of those teams that if you take for granted, they could definitely make you pay. Now, the main area I wanted to improve on to start the season was my pass catching. I wanted to make sure I was a reliable option on passing plays, that way I would never have to lead the field on 3rd down. I was able to break off a huge run after catching a screen pass, but we'd only walk away with 3 points on that drive. But on 3rd down on the next drive, coach put the ball in my hands and I was able to make magic happen. All that film I watched my freshman year paid off as I was able to slip through the tight, wet hole of the defense and score a 55-yard touchdown out of nowhere. But of course, I wasn't finished. Our defense was able to get a goal line turnover and put the ball back in our hands at the 2-yard line. Then I would go on to make what many have considered the run of the year. I would go on to score a 90-yard bomb. I was so tired, bro, I completely collapsed at the goal line. Yet again, I had an amazing day on the field, finishing with 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, 19 attempts, and 102 receiving yards. But look, man, my performance completely wowed the college football world as I went on to win Player of the Week, and I also moved into the number 1 spot on the Heisman watch list. Our first game at home definitely didn't start off as planned as we'd find ourselves down 10-0 to 12th ranked Ole Miss. And if I'm being totally honest, bruh, they completely had me shut down the entire first half. But luckily my dog Jalen was able to make several plays through the air. Now, I was able to find the end zone right before halftime after breaking off my curl route for a 3-yard touchdown, cutting the lead down to just 3 points. Starting off the second half, Jalen picked up right where he left off, throwing a dart through the middle of the defense. Then I finally got my head into the game and came up extremely clutch with a 50-yard house call. But look though, all credit has to go to those big guys up front for clearing the way. I think I went completely untouched until like the 5-yard line. But look, that round woke up the dog in me and pretty much completely opened the floodgates for our offense. I refused to be brought down as I broke several tackles on a 19-yard gain. Jalen gave us an 11-point lead off of another 3-yard passing touchdown, and then our defense went down and got another stop. Now, I was given the privilege to put the nail in the coffin as I took the pitch on an option play to the house, giving us a 27-point lead and a hard-fought victory at home. Now, for some reason, even though we were still undefeated, we had dropped down one spot to the number 2 ranked team in the country. And can you guess who was number 1? Of course, none other than LSU. Man, listen, I think I speak for the entire team when I say we was pissed off about this happening. And unfortunately, Georgia State just had to be the ones we took our anger out on. Now, at the time we matched up with them, they were 4-0 just like us, but listen, didn't none of that matter. Man, we went out there and beat the taste buds off them boys. I put on my usual performance and rushed for over 200 yards in just the first half with, I think I had like 3 touchdowns. I didn't even play the entire second half because honestly, the game was pretty much over. We pitched a shutout at home and beat them boys 49-0, but it was on to the next. We be at home taking on a very tough 7-0 Arkansas team. We reached the midway point of the season, so before the game, coach reminded us of all of our goals and everything we set out to accomplish at the beginning of the year. Me personally, I think that meeting was very much needed because sometimes winning in such a dominant fashion can have you start to feel untouchable. Before you know it, you let your guard down and then you'll be looking defeat right in the face. Not only that, but just about everybody on the team was dealing with some type of injury or soreness, but coach said that's all a part of the journey. After that meeting, I adopted the warrior mindset that Coach Saban was talking about. I was mentally prepared to lay it all on the line to get the victory. And well, I went out on the field and did just that. Arkansas put up a very good fight though, but in the end, it just wasn't enough as we take the 28-7 victory at home. The team was rolling and working like a well-oiled BBC. Tennessee came into town looking to pull off a huge upset, but of course we wasn't going for none of that. Jalen started off the game strong, throwing an absolute dot to the corner of the end zone. Then I followed up by breaking off a huge run up the middle of the defense. Now, the thing that was slept on throughout the season was my vision. All people seemed to care about was my speed and agility, but I don't care what nobody says. My vision is next level. We take the 14-0 lead in the first quarter, and it was starting to look like another blowout at home, but that's when tragedy struck. Jalen took a big hit on the quarterback keeper right outside the end zone. Well, that hit would result in an abdominal tear and cause him to miss the next 10 weeks of the season. As you can imagine, this news would be a huge blow to not only our offense, but our team as a whole. Now, we still went on to secure the victory over the Volunteers with Jalen's backup now having the keys to our offense, but this injury couldn't have come at a worse time as our next game we'd be facing our rivals and the number 2 team in the nation, LSU. Man, the game versus LSU was crazy to say the least. Even though almost every game we had played that season was completely sold out, it was just something special about that game that felt extra loud. But look, this game was like a heavyweight title fight. We'd strike first after I pull off a huge 70-yard house call. Then our defense went out there and got a huge stop shutting down all the Tigers' momentum. On our very next drive, my guy Tyler would shake free for like a 30-yard gain, but he would also take a massive hit on the sideline from the LSU defense, causing a fumble. Luckily, the Tigers weren't able to capitalize off that fumble and put the ball right back in our hands. I was looking to make a play whichever way I could, and I came super close to making a house call up the sideline. Although this was Tyler's first time starting all season, he showed tremendous composure in the pocket connecting to my boy Isaiah. Then on 3rd and 6, I had to fight extra hard for the first down after catching a screen pass to the right-hand side of the field. 3 plays later, it was 4th and 1, and for some reason, I'd be on the sideline as the LSU offense forced a tackle for loss, taking over possession of the ball. Jumping ahead to the 3rd quarter, we were down by a touchdown, so it was time to tap back into that warrior mentality. I did whatever I could to get us into the end zone, but eventually we came up short and we have to settle for a field goal. With one last chance to take the lead, I take a handoff on a draw play and was able to pick up about 4 yards. Then on the very next play, 2nd and 6, I was able to only pick up 2 yards. But look, man, on 3rd down, the coach thought it would be a good idea to take me out, and I stood on the sideline and watched LSU stop that lousy screen pass the same way they had been doing all game. We went on to lose to our rivals at home and suffer our first defeat of the year. Seeing them boys celebrate on our logo hurt, but honestly, I couldn't be mad at nobody but myself. I had a chance to give us another shot at winning, but unfortunately, I came up short. After suffering that loss at home, we dropped down to the number 5 spot. Honestly, the team's energy and focus was at an all-time low, and we went out and had a horrible game versus Mississippi State. It's really crazy what one single loss can do to a team. I mean, we were still in position to make a run for the playoffs, but I think most people felt like that LSU game was some type of in-season championship or something. I'm not going to sit here and act like I was Mr. Positive. Nah, don't get me wrong, I was just as pissed off as everybody else, but y'all got to remember, I was in a race for the Heisman. I couldn't afford to get comfortable. Luckily, we were able to pull off a very sloppy victory at home in a very close game. Honestly, if it wasn't for our defense, I think we probably have another loss on our record. After the close game at Mississippi State, we put on a beating versus a very poor FCS East team. Well, LSU actually ended up losing to Texas A&M, a team we had already beat earlier in the season. Man, that loss shook up the rankings and put us in the number 2 spot in the country, only behind Ohio State. Well, Ohio State went on to suffer their second loss on the season, which moved us back to the number 1 team in the nation. But we had one problem, the Auburn Tigers. We were down big in the second half on the road, but I was able to score the leaping touchdown, moving us to within 4 points. But that's when tragedy would strike again, as I not only got tackled for the huge loss on the play, but I also suffered an injury causing me to leave the game. I would be out of the game until the 53-second mark of the final quarter. Luckily, our offense was able to go down and score a touchdown, but so did the Tigers. I fought through the pain and came up clutch with 2 big plays moving the ball up the field. Then my boy Tyler was able to make an amazing read for the huge gain, putting us right outside the red zone, where on the very next play, I was able to take advantage of the zone coverage and find a huge opening in the defense for a touchdown. Our defense was able to put the final nail in the coffin with the clutch interception took back for a touchdown. The energy we had lost versus LSU all came rushing back at one time. Bruh, we had officially punched our ticket to the national championship game. We find ourselves at the Rose Bowl in Southern California to take on the number 2 ranked Texas Longhorns for the college football championship. The stadium was sold out to max capacity, the weather was perfect and the lights were bright. Not only that, but my guy Jalen Milroe was finally back from his injury and in the starting lineup. But look, we come down on our first drive and reach the red zone, but unfortunately, we'd have to settle for a field goal. But on our very next possession, I would do what I have been doing all season, making huge plays when we needed them the most. I broke off a 70-yard run on a counter play for a touchdown, putting us up by 9, but like I always say, bro, I wasn't done yet. Our defense got to stop and put the ball right back in our hands, only for me to break off another 40-yard run again. We find ourselves right outside the red zone, but unfortunately, we weren't able to capitalize and eventually went on to miss the field goal. This game was definitely a defensive game. Other than that big house call I made in the first half, we weren't able to move the ball up the field to save our lives. I gotta give credit where it's due, man. The Longhorns defense and their coaches completely shut me out during the second half. But luckily our defense was just as good, as they were able to hold them to only 6 points the entire game. With only 5 seconds left in regulation, we were in victory formation. We finally did it. We won the national championship. If I'm being honest, the feeling was like none other. All the 6 a.m. weight sessions, the 2-a-day practices in the summer, the many ups and downs throughout the season, all of that led up to this one moment. Look, you can say what you want about our squad, but the one thing you have to accept, we champions. I went on to win just about every single award there is to win from the running back position. And of course, I finished the year as a first-team All-American. But the most important trophy I took home was the Heisman. After only playing football for just a few years, I had officially won the most prestigious award there is and put my name in the history books forever. See, I told y'all I had an unbelievable sophomore year, but you didn't want to believe me. Man, if I'm being honest, it's kind of hard for me to believe myself. But look, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of changes going on with the program at Alabama since Coach Saban left. And I'm honestly not really sure what the team is going to look like next season with all the transfers. Say, y'all do me a favor and comment down below. Should I just stay put at Alabama, or should I jump into that transfer portal? But look, Granny cooked my favorite meal and I'm starving, so I'm going to go ahead and dig in. I'll tap back in with y'all in the next one.